I am Samantha Andrews, 30 years old, and a single mother to my beautiful 5-year-old daughter, Emma. Never in a million years did I think my own father would call me the family disgrace at our Thanksgiving dinner before throwing us out into the cold November night. What he and the rest of my family didn't know was that they had been living off my $20 million fortune for years. I simply said fine and walked out with my head held high. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If my story resonates with you, please hit subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me and my daughter. Growing up in the Andrews family meant appearances were everything. Our colonial-style house in an affluent Connecticut neighborhood was always spotless, ready for unexpected visits from my father's business associates or my mother's garden club friends. My father, Richard Andrews, was a banking executive who measured success in dollar signs and social standing. My mother, Eleanor, was the perfect executive wife, immaculately dressed, socially connected, and obsessed with maintaining our family's pristine reputation. From an early age, I learned that approval in our house was conditional. "Stand up straight, Samantha," my mother would whisper harshly at social gatherings. "Your posture makes you look slovenly." My father's criticisms were more direct. "Why can't you get straight, as like your brother Thomas or Jennifer never gave us this much trouble at your age?" Thomas, 2 years older, was the golden child, captain of the debate team Yale-bound, and seemingly perfect in every way. Jennifer, my older sister by 4 years, was the social butterfly who married her college sweetheart Paul right after graduation and quickly produced 2 perfectly timed grandchildren. Then there was me. I was always the odd one out, more interested in computers than cotillions, more fascinated by startups than social status. I did well in school, but preferred coding in my room to attending the country club events my parents valued so highly. Everything changed my senior year of college. I met Jack in my business ethics class. He was charming, ambitious, and for the first time I felt truly seen by someone. 6 months into our relationship, I discovered I was pregnant. When I told Jack, he disappeared, blocked my number, dropped out of our shared classes, and vanished from my life completely. I still remember the phone call to my parents. The silence after I told them lasted 27 seconds. I counted each one as my heart pounded in my chest. "You've always been determined to embarrass this family," my father finally said. "Come home. We'll figure out how to fix this situation." By fix, he meant adoption or abortion. When I made it clear I was keeping my baby, the real punishment began. Cold shoulders at family gatherings, pointed comments about girls who throw away their futures. My mother telling her friends I was taking some time off school for health reasons. Somehow I finished my degree, taking online classes and studying while my baby daughter slept. Those early days were brutally hard. I rented a tiny studio apartment and took freelance coding jobs while juggling childcare. My family provided minimal support, occasional babysitting accompanied by lectures about my poor life choices. What my family didn't know was that during those sleep-deprived nights, I was building something valuable. A startup idea I had been tinkering with since sophomore year was gaining traction. By Emma's first birthday, I had secured seed funding. By her third, my company had been acquired for a sum that still seemed surreal, $20 million after taxes. But I kept this success hidden from my family. I moved into a modest 3-bedroom house, told them I had found a stable job in tech support, and continued to endure their condescension and judgment at every family gathering. I wanted them to accept me and Emma for who we were, not for my bank account. Meanwhile, I quietly became their financial savior. When my father's investments took a hit during the recession, I anonymously covered their mortgage through a shell company. When Thomas's successful business ventures needed capital, mysterious angel investors appeared. When Jennifer needed tuition for her children's exclusive private school scholarships mysteriously materialized. Through it all, Emma grew into a bright, compassionate little girl who somehow remained untouched by the family's subtle cruelty. She loved visiting her grandparents' house, oblivious to their backhanded compliments and the way they compared her to Jennifer's properly raised children. This Thanksgiving, Emma was 5 years old, and I was 30. I had hoped that time might have softened my family's judgment. Emma had been excited for weeks about seeing her cousins and eating her grandmother's famous apple pie. I convinced myself that this year would be different. This year, maybe they would finally see us, really see us, and accept us as we were. I couldn't have been more wrong. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and cold. Emma bounced on my bed at 6 a.m., her eyes bright with excitement. "Is it time to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house yet?" she asked, her curly blonde hair still tousled from sleep. "Not yet, sweetheart," I smiled, pulling her in for a cuddle. "We have plenty of time to get ready." I had spent weeks preparing for this day. I'd ordered a case of my father's favorite Bordeaux wine, spending more on those bottles than my parents realized I supposedly made in a week. I'd purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone. A handcrafted leather portfolio for my father, a designer scarf for my mother, educational toys for my niece and nephew. After breakfast, I called my mother to confirm our arrival time. Her voice was tight with stress. "We're eating at 4 sharp, Samantha. Your father doesn't like delays." "We'll be there by 2, Mom. Can I bring anything?" A pause. Jennifer's handling the side dishes. "She makes such wonderful sweet potatoes. You just focus on getting yourself and Emma here on time. And please make sure Emma wears something appropriate. Last Christmas, that play dress was a bit much." The play dress had been a beautiful velvet holiday dress that Emma adored. I bit back a retort. "We'll be properly dressed, Mom. See you soon." After hanging up, I took a deep breath before waking Emma up from her nap. We spent the afternoon getting ready, and I helped Emma into the new dress I'd bought her. Navy blue with white trim, conservative enough for my parents, but still pretty enough that Emma felt special wearing it. "You look beautiful, baby," I told her as I braided her hair. "You too, Mommy," she replied, touching the sleeve of my burgundy sweater dress. "Will Uncle Thomas be there? He promised to show me a card trick last time." "Everyone will be there," I assured her. "And we're going to have a wonderful time." The drive to my parents' suburban home took 45 minutes. It was a stately colonial with perfect landscaping and a circular driveway where my father insisted all cars be parked in order of arrival with his Mercedes, always positioned prominently by the front steps. What my family didn't know was that I had been making their mortgage payments for the past 3 years after my father's investment portfolio took a devastating hit. The house they took such pride in would have been foreclosed on without my anonymous intervention. We arrived at 1:45, 15 minutes early. Emma clutched her small gift bags for her grandparents as we walked to the door. I balanced the wine case and my own packages, taking a steadying breath before ringing the doorbell. My sister Jennifer answered her perfect bob swinging as she gave me an appraising once over. "You're early," she said, not quite hiding her annoyance. She turned to Emma with a manufactured smile. "Hello, Emma. The children are in the playroom. Try not to mess up your dress before dinner, okay?" No hug, no warm welcome. I felt Emma press against my leg, suddenly shy. "Go on, sweetheart," I encouraged her. "Go find your cousins." As Emma reluctantly headed toward the playroom, Jennifer turned back to me. "Mom's finishing the table settings, and Dad and Paul are watching football with Aiden and Zoe." Jennifer's children, ages 7 and 9, were apparently enjoying privileges Emma wasn't included in. My brother Thomas emerged from the kitchen, drink in hand. At 32, he had our father's tall build and authoritative presence. "Well, if it isn't the little sister," he said, giving me a brief side hug that felt more like a formality than affection. "Still at that tech support job?" "Still going strong," I replied with a tight smile, not mentioning that I now owned the company and employed over 50 people. "Good for you hanging in there," he said, with the condescending tone that suggested answering phones was a step up from complete failure. "Let me take that wine to Dad." As I walked toward the kitchen to greet my mother, I heard my father's voice from the study. "She's early, of course. Probably has nowhere else to be. Did you see that dress on the child? At least it's not another inappropriate outfit." I froze, my chest tightening. Then I straightened my shoulders and continued walking. I would not let them ruin this day for Emma. I would plaster on a smile and get through this dinner just like I always did. In the kitchen, my mother was arranging cranberry sauce in a crystal dish. At 60, Eleanor Andrews still maintained her slim figure and highlighted blonde hair. She looked up when I entered. "Samantha, you're early." The same greeting, the same cool tone. "Hi, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving." I set down the packages I was carrying and moved to kiss her cheek. She allowed it, her body stiff. "Those go in the dining room," she said, nodding at the gifts. "We're exchanging after dinner this year. Jennifer thought it would be more civilized." "Of course," I said, gathering them up again. "Can I help with anything in here?" "Jennifer and I have it under control. Why don't you go check on Emma, make sure she's not disturbing Aiden and Zoe's game time?" I nodded and left the familiar disappointment settling in my stomach. Still, I reminded myself this was just the beginning of the evening. Things could improve. I just needed to stay positive and keep Emma's spirits up. In the hallway, I overheard Jennifer and my father talking in hushed tones. "She's wearing a nice dress," at least Jennifer was saying, though God knows how she afforded it on her salary. "Probably maxing out credit cards again," my father replied. "Some people never learn financial responsibility." I hurried past, pretending not to hear, my cheeks burning with the irony of his statement. The man whose mortgage I secretly paid was lecturing about financial responsibility. By the time I reached the playroom, I had composed myself. I found Emma sitting alone in the corner, flipping through a picture book, while her cousins played a video game, deliberately excluding her. "Hey, sweetheart," I said brightly. "Having fun?" Her small smile didn't reach her eyes. "Aiden says I'm too little to play their game." My heart ached, but I kept my voice upbeat. "Well, why don't we go see if Grandma needs help in the kitchen? I bet she'd love to show you how to fold the napkins into those fancy shapes you like." As we walked hand in hand back toward the kitchen, I made a silent promise to Emma. No matter what happened tonight, I would protect her from understanding the true nature of our family's treatment. She deserved to believe in the warmth and acceptance that should come with family, even if the reality fell painfully short. At precisely 4 o'clock, my mother rang the small silver bell that had been a wedding gift from her own mother. The sound cut through the house, summoning everyone to the dining room. Emma squeezed my hand as we made our way to the elaborately set table. The seating arrangement was immediately apparent and telling. My father sat at the head of the table with my mother at the opposite end. Thomas and Jennifer, along with their spouses and children, occupied the middle seats, the positions of honor. Emma and I were placed at the very end beside my mother, but as far from my father as possible, as if our perceived failures might be contagious. "Everyone take your assigned seats," my father announced, though no place cards were necessary. We all knew our rank in the family hierarchy. Emma climbed into her chair, her feet dangling above the floor. No one had thought to provide a booster seat, though one sat unused in the corner from when Jennifer's children were younger. "Samantha, make sure Emma doesn't spill anything on the tablecloth," my mother said. "It's Belgian lace." "She'll be careful," I assured her, placing a napkin across Emma's lap. I gave my daughter an encouraging smile, which she returned uncertainly. My father stood to carve the turkey, his annual performance. He wore a crisp white shirt and tie, even for a family dinner. His silver hair perfectly combed his posture ramrod straight despite being in his mid-60s. Before we begin, he announced, crystal glass in hand, "I'd like to propose a toast to our family and all our blessings this year." He proceeded to methodically list each family member's achievements. To Thomas, whose financial consulting firm landed the Westbrook account last month. To Jennifer, whose charity gala raised over $50,000 for the Children's Hospital. To Paul, who made partner at his law firm. To Aiden, who made the travel soccer team. And Zoe, who received the citizenship award at school. He paused his gaze deliberately, skipping over Emma and me. And to Eleanor, whose tireless dedication makes these family gatherings possible. The omission hung in the air, obvious and intentional. Emma looked up at me, confusion in her eyes. "What about us, Mommy?" she whispered too loudly in the sudden silence. Jennifer's husband, Paul, chuckled. "Out of the mouths of babes," he said, his tone, making it clear he found Emma's question inappropriate rather than innocent. "Well," my father said with a tight smile, I suppose we can acknowledge Samantha's persistence in her current position. Consistency has its merits. The backhanded compliment stung, but I smiled for Emma's sake. Thank you, Dad. Emma and I have had a good year. And what grade are you in now, Emily? My mother asked, getting my daughter's name wrong, as she sometimes did. I'm Emma, Grandma, my daughter corrected politely. I'm in kindergarten. My teacher says I'm reading at a second grade level. My mother replied noncommittally. Aiden was reading at a third grade level at your age, wasn't he, Jennifer? And so it went. Every conversation circled back to the accomplishments of Thomas or Jennifer or their children. When I mentioned Emma's talent for drawing, Jennifer immediately pulled out her phone to show everyone Zoe's artwork that had been displayed in the school lobby. When I tried to discuss a book I'd recently enjoyed, Thomas interrupted to talk about a financial article he'd been quoted in. The food was passed around with the best portions pointedly served to everyone but Emma and me. My father's comments grew increasingly sharp as he worked his way through his second glass of the expensive Bordeaux I'd brought. So Samantha, he said during a lull in the conversation, have you given any thought to providing Emma with a proper father figure? A child needs stability, you know. I set down my fork carefully. Emma has stability. We have a lovely home, a good routine, and plenty of love. But not a man in the house, he pressed. How is she supposed to learn proper family values? Before I could respond, Jennifer jumped in. Speaking of family values, she said with a meaningful glance at her husband, Paul and I have an announcement. All attention immediately shifted to my sister, who placed her hand on her still flat stomach. We're expecting baby number 3 will be joining us next June. The table erupted in excitement. My mother actually clapped her hands together in delight. My father stood up again to propose another toast. Emma looked at me, clearly sensing the stark difference between the reception of Jennifer's news and the cool acknowledgement of our existence. That's wonderful news, I said sincerely, because despite everything, I didn't begrudge my sister, her happiness, or her growing family. Congratulations, Jennifer and Paul. Thank you, Jennifer said, barely glancing my way before turning to our mother. We're thinking of converting the guest room into a nursery. I was hoping you could help with the design, Mom. Of course. Oh, this is just wonderful news. Another grandchild. My mother beamed, pointedly not mentioning that Emma was also her grandchild. As dessert was being served, Thomas cleared his throat. Since we're sharing good news, I have an announcement as well. Henderson Financial has offered me a directorship. It comes with a significant salary increase and stock options. Another round of effusive congratulations followed. My father actually teared up, something I'd never seen him do for any accomplishment of mine. This calls for the good scotch, he declared, rising, to retrieve his prized bottle from the cabinet. While he was gone, Emma tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can I tell everyone about my art prize at school? Of course, sweetheart, I said, giving her an encouraging nod. Emma sat up straight. I got a blue ribbon for my painting at school, she announced proudly. It's going to be in the winter art show. There was a moment of awkward silence before my mother said, That's nice, dear. Jennifer, tell me more about your plans for the nursery. Emma's face fell, and I felt a surge of protective anger. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I intended. Emma's achievement is quite special. Only 3 students in the entire elementary school were selected for the district showcase. Well, not everyone can afford private school art programs, Jennifer said with a dismissive wave. I'm sure the public school standards are different. Emma attends Westfield Academy. I corrected her, naming one of the most prestigious private schools in our area. What my family didn't know was that I served on the board of trustees and had endowed a scholarship program there. Westfield? My mother looked surprised. How can you possibly afford that on your salary? I manage my money carefully, I said simply. Must be those child support payments from the absent father, my father remarked, as he returned with his scotch. At least he's good for something. Actually, Jack has never paid a penny in child support, I said, my voice tight. Emma's education is entirely my responsibility, and I'm proud to provide it for her. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table, broken by Aiden, reaching across to grab a cookie. His elbow knocked against a crystal bowl, sending it toppling toward Emma's lap. She jerked back instinctively, and the bowl crashed to the floor, shattering into dozens of pieces. Emma Jennifer exclaimed, "Look what you've done!" "It wasn't me," Emma said in a small voice. Aiden bumped it. "Don't blame my son for your clumsiness," Jennifer snapped. I opened my mouth to defend Emma, but my father's voice cut through the room like ice. "That was your grandmother's crystal, Samantha. A family heirloom. This is exactly why we can't have nice things around your child." "Did Emma, didn't I?" began. "I saw what happened," he interrupted. "Your daughter jerked her arm and knocked it over. Just like you always were, careless and then quick to blame others." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Grandpa, I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't," my mother said with a sigh. "But intentions don't fix broken heirlooms, do they?" I felt something shift inside me. The careful facade I'd maintained for years began to crack as I watched my daughter shrink into herself, accepting blame for something she hadn't done. The shattered crystal seemed to break something in my father as well. He stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger and too much scotch. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he said, his voice rising. "No discipline, no respect for family traditions or property." He pointed at Emma, who was trying not to cry. "This is what happens when children are raised in broken homes without proper values." "Dad," I said, keeping my voice deliberately calm. "It was an accident, and it wasn't Emma's fault. Accidents happen in homes with all kinds of family structures." He turned his anger fully toward me. "Don't you dare lecture me about family structures, Samantha. You who couldn't even maintain a relationship with your child's father. You who got pregnant out of wedlock and refused to correct your mistake." "Emma is not a mistake," I said, feeling a dangerous calm settle over me. "Look at you," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. 30 years old, no husband, no real career, living off who knows what income in that shabby house of yours, sending your child to a school you can't afford, probably drowning in debt, just like you always were irresponsible with money. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, maybe this isn't the time." "No, I'm tired of tiptoeing around this," my father interrupted. "I'm tired of pretending at every family gathering. Your sister is a disgrace to this family, Thomas. Always has been. Headstrong, rebellious, refusing to follow the path we set out for her." "Richard," my mother said weakly, but he waved her off. "Do you know what my colleagues say? They ask about Thomas's business, about Jennifer's charity work, and then they get this look, this pitying look, when they remember I have another daughter, the single mother, the family embarrassment." Each word hit like a physical blow, but I remained outwardly composed, even as I felt Emma trembling beside me. "And now," he continued, gesturing at the broken crystal, "she's raising her daughter to be just as careless, just as disrespectful of family traditions." "That's enough," I said quietly. "Is it?" He turned to face me fully. "Is it enough, Samantha? Because I've had enough. Enough of your sullen presence at family gatherings. Enough of watching you raise that child without proper guidance. Enough of the embarrassment you bring to our family name." Jennifer, apparently emboldened by our father's tirade, joined in. "You've always thought you were special, Sam. Always thought the rules didn't apply to you. But look at where that got you. A dead-end job, no husband, struggling to give your daughter what our children have naturally." "A proper home," my father continued. "That's what children need. 2 parents' stability values. Not whatever it is you're providing in that little house of yours." Emma was openly crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I put my arm around her shoulders and stood up. "We're leaving," I said calmly. "Running away, just like always," my father sneered. "Can't face the truth, can you?" "The truth is that you've never accepted Emma or me for who we are," I said. "And I'm done letting you make us feel small." My father's face turned an alarming shade of red. "You want to know who made you small, Samantha? You did. With your poor choices and your stubborn refusal to listen to those who know better. And now you're doing the same to your daughter." Emma buried her face against my side, her small body shaking with sobs. "Get out," my father suddenly shouted, slamming his hand on the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. Get out of this house, you ungrateful, disrespectful piece of trash, and take your ill-mannered child with you." A stunned silence fell over the table. Even Jennifer looked shocked at our father's outburst. Richard, my mother, said faintly, "It's Thanksgiving." "I don't care what day it is," he spat. "I want her out of my house. The family disgrace. That's what you are, Samantha. A disgrace to the Andrews name." I looked around the table at the faces of my family members. My mother pale and silent. Thomas uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Jennifer a mixture of shock and smug satisfaction on her face. Her husband Paul staring at his plate. Even the children were frozen in place, witnessing the explosion of years of simmering resentment. I took a deep breath and gathered my dignity around me like armor. "Fine," I said simply. I turned to Emma. "Get your coat, sweetheart. We're going home." "But Mommy," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "What about Grandma's pie?" "There will be other pies," I promised her, my heart breaking at her innocent concern amid such cruelty. "That's right, run away," my father called after us as I led Emma to the foyer. "That's all you know how to do." I helped Emma into her coat and collected our purse and car keys. My hands were steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. As we reached the front door, I turned to face my family who had followed us into the hallway. "You know," I said quietly, "for years I've wanted nothing more than your approval, your acceptance. I wanted Emma to have the family I thought I had growing up, but now I see that was an illusion. This isn't a family. It's a hierarchy of judgment and conditional love." "How dare you," my father began, but I held up my hand and to my surprise he fell silent. "Emma and I deserve better than this. We deserve love that doesn't come with stipulations and criticism. Thank you for making that so abundantly clear today." I opened the door and guided Emma outside into the cold November evening. I could hear my father still shouting behind us, but his words no longer had the power to wound me. In the car, Emma's tears fell freely. "Why does Grandpa hate us, Mommy?" "He doesn't hate us, sweetheart," I said, starting the engine. "He just doesn't understand us. And that's not our problem anymore." As we drove away from the house I'd been secretly keeping from foreclosure, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. It was time to stop hiding my success, time to stop enabling their cruelty, time to build a life based on genuine connections rather than familial obligation. We checked into a luxury hotel that night. I ordered room service, a Thanksgiving feast just for the two of us, and we ate ice cream sundaes in fluffy hotel robes while watching animated movies. As Emma finally drifted off to sleep, exhausted from the emotional day, I made a series of phone calls that would set my new plan in motion. Morning sunlight streamed through the hotel suite's windows, casting golden patterns across the plush carpet. Emma was still asleep, curled up in the king-sized bed, her blonde curls spread across the pillow. I'd been awake for hours, finalizing the details of our new beginning. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Diane, my executive assistant, a fact my family didn't know, believing she was just my friend on the rare occasions they'd met her. "Morning, Sam," she said when I answered. "I've made all the arrangements as you requested. The Miami house is being prepared. Your office there will be ready by Monday, and Emma's school transfer is in process. They're thrilled to have her mid-year." "Thank you, Diane," I said, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Emma. "And the other matter, I've contacted your financial team. They're awaiting your final authorization to terminate all the Shell Corporation support. Just say the word." I took a deep breath. For years, I'd been anonymously supporting my family, paying my parents' mortgage funding, Thomas's business ventures covering Jennifer's children's private school tuition, and her lavish lifestyle additions, all through carefully constructed shell companies and scholarships that couldn't be traced back to me. "Do it," I said firmly. "Terminate all financial support effective immediately." "Are you sure? It's going to be quite a shock for them." "I'm sure. It's time they understood what real consequences feel like." After hanging up, I called Michael, my financial advisor. "Sam, I got your email. Are you certain about this? It's a significant change to your financial structure." "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. No more anonymous support. No more hiding my success. It's time for honesty. All right. I'll dissolve the shell corporations and redirect those funds into your foundation account instead. Your family will start receiving notices about overdue payments within days. Thank you, Michael. As I ended the call, Emma stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, where are we? At a hotel, remember? We had our own Thanksgiving dinner here last night. Her face clouded as memories of the previous evening returned. Are we going home now? I sat beside her on the bed and took her small hands in mine. Actually, I was thinking we might have a new adventure. How would you feel about moving to our house in Miami, the one right by the beach that we visited last spring? Her eyes widened. The one with the swimming pool and the big palm trees. That's the one. But what about school? And your work? There's a wonderful school in Miami that would love to have you. And I can work from anywhere. That's one of the perks of being the boss. She tilted her head. You're the boss, I thought. You helped people with computer problems. I smiled, realizing how much I'd hidden from everyone, even my own daughter in some ways. I do help people with computer problems, but I actually own the company. I'm the person in charge of everyone. Like a queen, she asked, her eyes bright with this new understanding. I laughed. Something like that. And you know what? I think it's time everyone knew that. Over breakfast, I explained to Emma, in terms a 5-year-old could understand, that we were wealthy but had kept it a secret from the family. I told her we were going to start a new life in Miami where we could be ourselves without hiding anything. Will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again? She asked carefully, spreading jam on her toast. That will be up to them, I answered honestly. But first they need to learn how to be kind and respectful to both of us. We checked out of the hotel and drove home to pack our essentials. The movers would handle the rest in the coming days. By that evening, we were on a private flight to Miami, leaving behind the cold Connecticut November for the warm Florida sunshine. Our Miami beach house was a contemporary masterpiece of glass and white stone with panoramic ocean views and a sprawling infinity pool. Emma ran through the spacious rooms, exclaiming over the view from her new bedroom and the playroom I'd had designed specifically for her. This is really our house, she asked in wonder. Really and truly, I confirmed. And now we don't have to pretend it isn't. The first week in Miami was healing for both of us. We swam in the ocean, explored our new neighborhood, visited Emma's new school, and began to feel the weight of years of judgment and pretense lifting from our shoulders. Then the calls began. First from Thomas, his voice uncharacteristically panicked. Sam, something weird is happening. The angel investors in my business suddenly pulled out. All of them. On the same day. Did you hear anything about a market shift? No, I said calmly. But I'm sure a successful businessman like you has contingency plans. Next was Jennifer, her voice tight with controlled fury. Samantha, did you know Aiden and Zoe's school just called to say their scholarships have been revoked in the middle of the academic year? Something about the foundation that provided them dissolving unexpectedly. It's got to be a mistake. How unfortunate, I replied. I hope you and Paul can figure something out. My mother called 3 days later, her voice trembling. Samantha, something terrible has happened. We've received a foreclosure notice on the house. Your father's beside himself. He says it must be a bank error, but they're insisting we haven't made a mortgage payment in months. That sounds stressful, Mom. Have you called a financial advisor? We can't afford a financial advisor right now, Samantha. We might lose our home. The home you grew up in. Don't you care? I care about a lot of things, Mom. Like how people treat my daughter. There was a telling silence on the other end of the line. Finally, a week after Thanksgiving, came the call I'd been waiting for. My father, his voice stripped of its usual authority, almost unrecognizable in its desperation. Samantha, he said without preamble, something's very wrong. The bank says we haven't been making mortgage payments, but the statements have shown them paid. Thomas's business is collapsing. Jennifer says the children's school tuition suddenly came due all at once. It's like someone is systematically destroying this family. That sounds serious. I said, watching Emma draw pictures on our beachfront terrace. Have you considered that maybe the financial foundation of your lives wasn't what you thought it was? What are you talking about? He demanded, a hint of his old temper returning. Dad, where do you think the money has been coming from all these years? After your investments tanked in the recession, after Thomas's first 3 business ventures failed, after Jennifer and Paul started living well beyond Paul's law firm's salary. What do you know about any of this? His voice had gone very quiet. I know everything about it because I'm the one who's been paying for all of it. For years. That's impossible. You work in tech support. I own Stratasoft, the company that acquired TechFusion for $20 million 3 years ago. I'm the CEO and majority shareholder. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear his breathing. That's not possible, he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. The mortgage payments on your house have been coming from a shell corporation called Andrews Heritage Holdings. I created it to anonymously support you and Mom after the recession. Thomas's angel investors. That was me. Jennifer's children's scholarships, my educational foundation, the family vacations, the new cars, the country club memberships, all me. Why? He started, then cleared his throat. Why would you hide this from us? Because I wanted you to accept me and Emma for who we are, not what I could give you. I wanted authentic relationships, not financial ones. But I've realized that was never going to happen. Samantha, if what you're saying is true, you need to restart these payments immediately. Your mother and I are about to lose our home. Your brother's business is collapsing. Your sister's children... My sister's children will be fine attending public school, just like the family Disgrace, and her daughter would have been fine in your eyes. The bitterness I'd kept contained for years edged into my voice. You called me trash, Dad. You threw your own granddaughter out into the cold on Thanksgiving. Actions have consequences. You can't do this to your family, he protested, but the imperious tone that had intimidated me for decades was gone, replaced by naked fear. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied. I'm simply stopping doing things for you. There's a difference. What do you want? An apology? Fine, I apologize for what I said. I was upset about the crystal. This isn't about the crystal, Dad. It's about years of conditional love and judgment. It's about teaching Emma that she deserves respect, not criticism. It's about finally being honest about who I am and what I've accomplished, despite your constant message that I was a failure. I could hear him struggling to process this seismic shift in our family dynamic. His voice, when he spoke again, was subdued in a way I'd never heard before. Where are you? We need to talk about this in person. Emma and I have moved to Miami. We're starting fresh where we can be ourselves without judgment. Miami? You can't just take my granddaughter to Miami without discussion. I laughed, the sound surprising even me. I think you forfeited any right to that discussion when you called her ill-mannered and kicked her out of Thanksgiving dinner. The conversation ended shortly after, with my father still reeling from revelations that had upended his understanding of our family's financial reality. I knew it wouldn't be the last difficult call, but for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely in control of my relationship with my family. That night, as Emma and I watched the sunset from our beachfront terrace, she looked up at me with serious eyes. Are Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Jennifer and Uncle Thomas going to be okay? I stroked her hair gently. They're going to have to make some changes, but yes, they'll be okay. They just won't be living off our money anymore. Was that a secret? That we were giving them money? It was. But I don't think we need any more secrets between us, do you? She shook her head solemnly. No more secrets. Just us being us. Just us being us, I agreed, hugging her close as the last rays of sun disappeared beyond the horizon. December in Miami proved to be a revelation. While our old home in Connecticut would have been blanketed in snow requiring heavy coats and boots, Emma and I spent weekends on the beach in light sweaters collecting shells and building sandcastles. The warmth of the sun seemed to mirror the warmth growing in our hearts as we settled into our authentic lives. Emma thrived at her new school, Wellington Preparatory Academy, where she was welcomed warmly by teachers who recognized her artistic talents and encouraged her academic curiosity. Without the shadow of family judgment hanging over her, she blossomed, making friends easily, and coming home each day bubbling with stories about art projects and science experiments. I established my company's Miami office and began working on a new educational technology initiative that had been my passion project for years, developing affordable coding curricula for underprivileged schools. In the evenings, instead of worrying about presenting the right image to my family, I focused on building a genuine support network. Our next-door neighbors, the Ramirez, had twin daughters Emma's age, and soon playdates and family dinners became regular occurrences. I joined a business women's mentoring group and found friendship with women who valued ambition and independence rather than criticizing it. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't hiding any aspect of myself from the people around me. Meanwhile, the situation with my family continued to evolve. The calls and messages came regularly, their tone shifting from angry demands to desperate pleas to tentative reconciliation attempts. My mother was the first to truly reach out. 2 weeks before Christmas, she called, her voice lacking its usual crisp efficiency. "Samantha," she said, "I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened." "That's good to hear, Mom. Your father isn't handling this well. His pride is, well, you know your father." "I do," I agreed. "But this isn't about his pride. It's about respect." A long silence followed before she spoke again. "I miss Emma," she finally said, her voice small. "I find myself thinking about her drawings on the refrigerator and the way she used to help me arrange flowers." The admission surprised me. My mother had never been demonstrative with either her children or grandchildren. "She misses you too," I said, because it was true. Despite everything, Emma asked about her grandmother regularly. "I'd like to see you both. I could come to Miami. Just me." I considered her request carefully. That might be possible, but there would need to be some ground rules. Ground rules. She sounded uncertain. "Yes. No criticism of our life choices. No comparisons to Jennifer's children. No subtle digs about Emma lacking a father figure. Just acceptance of us as we are." Another pause. "I think I can manage that." And surprisingly, she did. A week before Christmas, Eleanor Andrews arrived in Miami, looking smaller and less intimidating than I remembered. She brought gifts for Emma, thoughtfully selected art supplies rather than the educational toys she usually gave that were more appropriate, and made a visible effort to engage with my daughter on Emma's terms. On her second day, as we watched Emma swimming in the pool, my mother turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I've been a terrible mother to you, haven't I?" The blunt admission left me momentarily speechless. "You always wanted me to be something I wasn't," I finally said. "I could never quite measure up to the daughter you had in mind." "I thought I was helping you," she said, twisting her wedding ring, "pushing you toward what I believed would make you happy and successful. I never considered that your definition of those things might be different from mine." And now I prompted. She gestured toward the beach house, the pool, the evidence of my success. "Now I see that you knew exactly what you were doing all along. You've built an extraordinary life, Samantha, on your own terms." It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a beginning. By the time she left, we had established a tentative new relationship, one based on who we actually were rather than who she had always wanted me to be. Thomas was next. His business on the verge of collapse, he swallowed his pride and called to ask for advice rather than a handout. "I don't understand how you did it," he admitted during a video call. "Built something so successful from scratch." "Hard work," I told him, "and understanding what people actually need versus what you think they should want." "I've never been good at that," he said with surprising self-awareness. "I've always been busy trying to impress Dad." "How's that working out?" I asked, not unkindly. He laughed ruefully. "Not great. He's how different now. Quieter. Sometimes I catch him staring at your old pictures from college. I think he misses you." "He misses the idea of controlling me," I corrected. "That's different from missing me." Thomas considered this. "Maybe. Or maybe he's realizing what he lost by trying to control you all these years. Over the following weeks, Thomas and I developed a new kind of sibling relationship. I didn't rescue his business, but I did connect him with advisors who could help him restructure it on a more sustainable model. He began to see me as a peer, rather than his little sister who had made a mess of her life, and I found I enjoyed his company when it wasn't colored by competition and judgment. Jennifer proved the most resistant to change. When she finally called, her voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Aiden and Zoe had to leave their school mid-year. Do you know how traumatic that is for children?" "About as traumatic as being called ill-mannered and thrown out of Thanksgiving dinner," I suggested. "That was different. Emma is younger, she probably doesn't even remember." "She remembers," I said firmly. "Children always remember when they're made to feel unwelcome." "So, this is revenge. Punishing my children for something their grandfather said." "This isn't punishment, Jennifer. It's reality. Paul makes a good salary. You live in a beautiful home. Your children will receive an excellent public education, just as they would have if I'd never stepped in with private school tuition." "It's not the same, and you know it," she snapped. "Not everyone has $20 million to throw around." "No, they don't, which is why those who do have resources should be treated with respect, not contempt." We ended the call at an impasse, but in the weeks that followed, small changes emerged. Jennifer's social media posts, once filled with expensive vacations and designer purchases, became more modest. She mentioned volunteering at Aiden and Zoe's new school, and eventually she sent a brief text after Emma's birthday asking if her daughter might like to video chat with her cousins sometime. It was a small olive branch, but I accepted it for Emma's sake. The children, after all, were innocent in the adults' conflicts. My father remained the most distant. He communicated primarily through my mother, seemingly unable to directly address the reversal in our power dynamic. The mortgage on their house was modified to a more affordable payment after they sold one of their cars and cut back on country club memberships and other luxuries. I heard through Thomas that he'd taken a consulting position to supplement his retirement income, his first actual work in years. As Christmas approached, Emma and I planned our first holiday celebration in our new home. We decorated a tree with ornaments we selected together, baked cookies with the Ramirez family next door, and discussed which traditions we wanted to keep and which new ones we might create. "Will we see Grandma and Grandpa for Christmas?" Emma asked one evening, as we hung stockings by our beachfront windows, an unconventional location in the absence of a fireplace. "Not this year, sweetheart," I told her, "but Grandma might come visit again in January." "What about Grandpa?" I hesitated, wanting to be honest without burdening her. "Grandpa is still learning some important lessons about how to treat people kindly. When he's ready to do that, he can visit too." She considered this solemnly. "People can change if they really want to, right?" "Yes," I agreed, hugging her close. "People can change if they want to badly enough." We hosted Christmas dinner for our new friends and neighbors, filling our home with laughter and genuine warmth. As I watched Emma explaining her artwork to our guests with confidence and joy, I realized we had created something my parents' perfectly decorated home had always lacked, a place where people felt valued for exactly who they were. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, I sat on our terrace overlooking the moonlit ocean and reflected on how completely our lives had transformed in just 1 month. The phone call that had finally freed us from pretense had come on Thanksgiving, but the true liberation had been internal, the courage to live authentically and demand the respect we deserved. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my father, the first direct communication since our confrontation. "Merry Christmas to you and Emma," it read. "Your mother shows me the pictures you send. The house looks nice. Hope you're both well." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reconciliation. But it was an acknowledgement of our existence without criticism or judgment, and for now that was enough. I texted back a simple Merry Christmas and returned my gaze to the ocean, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. We had created a home where Emma would grow up, knowing her worth wasn't determined by others' expectations, where she would learn that respect must be earned, not demanded, where she would understand that family could be defined by love and acceptance rather than obligation and judgment. It was the greatest gift I could have given her, and myself. 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving dinner, Miami's summer heat had settled over the city, like a warm embrace. Emma had completed her first semester at Wellington Prep, with glowing reports from her teachers and a growing circle of friends. Her artwork had been featured in the school's spring exhibition, and her self-confidence blossomed with each passing day. I sat on our beachfront terrace, watching her build an elaborate sand castle with the Ramirez twins, her laughter carrying on the sea breeze. The change in her was remarkable. Gone was the hesitant child who second-guessed herself, replaced by a vibrant, assertive little girl who knew her own mind. The healing hadn't happened overnight. In those first weeks after Thanksgiving, Emma had frequent nightmares about being yelled at, about not being good enough. We worked through it together with the help of a gentle child psychologist who specialized in family trauma. Gradually, the nightmares subsided, replaced by dreams of ocean adventures and flying through clouds. My own healing journey had been more complex. Years of conditioning to seek approval from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving. It couldn't be undone in a single moment of courage. There were days when old doubts crept in, when I questioned whether I'd done the right thing in cutting off financial support and exposing my success. But those moments grew fewer and farther between, as I built a life centered on authenticity rather than appearance. I expanded my company's educational initiatives, creating a foundation specifically designed to support single parents in the tech industry. The work was deeply fulfilling, a way of transforming my own painful experiences into something that could help others. My relationships with my family had evolved into something I never would have imagined possible. My mother visited monthly each time, seeming a bit more relaxed, a bit more genuine. During her last visit, she'd actually kicked off her shoes to walk barefoot on the beach with Emma, something the Eleanor Andrews I grew up with would never have done in public. I was so concerned with what other people thought she admitted during that visit that I never stopped to ask myself what I actually wanted. Thomas had rebuilt his business on a smaller, more sustainable scale, and we'd developed a surprisingly collaborative professional relationship. He consulted on some of my foundation's initiatives, bringing a financial perspective that complemented my technical expertise. For the first time in our lives, we worked as partners rather than competitors. Jennifer remained the most distant, but even she had begun to thaw. After initial resentment about her children's changed circumstances, she'd eventually acknowledged that they were adapting well to their new school. Aiden had discovered a talent for science that might never have emerged in his previous environment, and Zoe had made friends with a more diverse group of children. "I still think you could have warned us," she said during one of our infrequent phone calls, "but I suppose we wouldn't have listened anyway." And then there was my father. Richard Andrews had been the last to reach out meaningfully, his pride a formidable barrier to reconciliation. But life has a way of putting things in perspective, and in his case it came in the form of a minor heart attack in April, a warning event as his doctor called it. I'd flown to Connecticut, immediately sitting in the hospital waiting room with my mother while he underwent tests. When I finally saw him propped up in the hospital bed, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, something shifted between us. "You came," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Of course I came. You're still my father." He was quiet for a long moment, the machines beeping softly in the background. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he finally said, "about choices, about what matters in the end." I waited, giving him space to continue. "It's not the house or the country club membership," he said. "When you're lying in a hospital bed thinking you might die, none of that matters at all." "What does matter?" I asked gently. His eyes, so like my own, met mine directly. Family, but not the way I defined it. Not appearances or achievements or following some prescribed path. Just knowing there are people who care if you live or die. It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from Richard Andrews, it was revolutionary. In the weeks that followed as he recovered and made the lifestyle changes, his doctor recommended we began rebuilding our relationship one careful conversation at a time. He would never be demonstrative or overtly affectionate. He would always retain some of his formality and reserve. But the cutting judgment, the conditional approval, these began to fade, replaced by something that resembled respect. Now, in June, he and my mother were planning their first visit to Miami together. I'd prepared Emma, carefully explaining that Grandpa was working on being kinder and more understanding, and that we would give him a chance to show us this new side of himself. People can change if they want to, badly enough, she reminded me, echoing our Christmas conversation. Maybe Grandpa wants to change. I think he does, I agreed, and we can appreciate that effort while still protecting ourselves. That was perhaps the most profound lesson I'd learned through this journey, that forgiveness didn't require vulnerability, that boundaries weren't punishment but protection, that love could exist, alongside clear expectations, of respect. I'd created a foundation called New Beginnings that provided resources, mentorship, and community for single parents. Through this work, I'd met dozens of women and men who shared similar stories of family judgment and rejection. Many had internalized the message that their non-traditional families were somehow lesser, that they had failed by not meeting conventional expectations. "You taught me that I don't have to accept that narrative," one young mother told me at a foundation event, "that I can define success on my own terms." Hearing my own journey reflected back to me through the experiences of others reinforced the universal nature of our human need for acceptance and our right to define family in ways that nurture rather than diminish us. Emma and I had created our own definition of family, one that included her grandparents and aunt and uncle to varying degrees, but also encompassed our neighbors, my colleagues, her friends, and the community we'd built around us. It was a family defined by mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation or biology alone. As the sun began to set over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I called Emma in from her sandcastle building. The Ramirez family was coming over for a barbecue, and we needed to prepare. "Mom," she said as we walked hand in hand back to the house, "are you happy we moved here?" I looked down at her sunlit face, so open and trusting, and felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this place of peace. "Incredibly happy," I told her. "Are you?" She nodded enthusiastically. "I like being able to just be me. And I like that you're just you, too." "That's the most important thing I've learned," I said, squeezing her hand. "That being truly yourself is worth more than trying to be what someone else wants you to be." "Even if they're family?" she asked with the piercing insight children sometimes display. "Especially if they're family," I confirmed. "Because real family loves you for exactly who you are, not who they wish you would be." That night, surrounded by friends who had become family, watching Emma laugh and play without the shadow of judgment hanging over her, I reflected on how a moment of crisis had ultimately led to liberation. My father's cruel words at Thanksgiving had been painful beyond measure, but they had also been the catalyst for breaking free from patterns of pretense and seeking approval that could never truly be earned. The $20 million had never been the real issue. Money was simply the tool that had allowed me to maintain the illusion that I could buy my family's acceptance. In revealing my success, I hadn't just changed their perception of me. I had changed how I perceived myself and what I was willing to accept in relationships. As our guests departed and Emma prepared for bed, I received a text from my father. "Looking forward to seeing you and Emma next week. Been practicing my sandcastle building skills." The simple message, free from criticism or judgment, represented a transformation I once would have thought impossible. Not perfect, not complete, but a genuine effort to connect on new terms. Mom, Emma called from her bedroom. "Can you read me a story?" "Coming, sweetheart," I replied, putting down my phone and moving toward the sound of her voice, toward the future we were building together, one authentic moment at a time. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't respect your choices? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of personal growth and transformation. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message about standing up for themselves and their children, share this video with them. Remember, you deserve respect just as you are, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to require it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to live authentically in your own life.